Shaken and horrified, I clicked on one.avi. I had to know what was going on. This time, it was a young boy, about 8 years old, down into a chair. He looked confused and innocent. I shook my head and fell into tears. Such a thing was not meant for this boy. The video was of the same quality as the last one. However, the background was much brighter. They seemed to be in an abandoned household, fallen apart and in ruin. The man floated over to the boy, much like he did in the last video. He kissed him gently on the cheek. He slowly brought heat lamps, the source of the brightness mentioned before, over to the boy. One by one, until the entire video was white, our camera was dimmed so that the boy could be seen again. The innocent look once seemed to be in the beginning of the video turned into one of excruciating pain. The heat lamp slowly began burning his clothes and skin. Bubbles and blisters began rapidly forming on his skin as he too screamed in pain. As with the woman in the last video, he screamed "why?" and was punished each time by being brutally slashed with a belt, studded with pieces of what appeared to be broken glass. The blister began to boil as the child was roasted alive. Eventually the scream stopped and the boy fell into seizures. At this point, the same chuckling in the last video could be heard again, this time even louder. He then took a knife and carved "I deserve this" into the child's melting torso as he screamed. Eventually, the boy stopped moving. I closed out at that point. I needed to see the next one. I had to witness it. This had to be stopped. With such a determination, I clicked on 2.avi. This time, there was no one strapped to a chair. Instead, an infant car seat was in the chair, with what seemed to be a newborn infant tightly strapped inside. Like the previous videos, a man floated over to the child, who rubbed its head and briefly went off camera, and came back with a syringe and manually stuck into the child's body, injecting a blue liquid into the child. Unique to the collection, the video began fast-forwarding. At first, the infant seemed normal, happy, smiling and carefree. As the fast-forwarding progressed, the child grew more and more uncomfortable. It started coughing and wheezing. It began puking up a white liquid and began crying, almost as if to be saying "why, why?" A dark bottle was briefly placed in front of the camera, and the words "tasty juice" were written upon it. The bottle was turned over to reveal its contents, a blue liquid that sizzled when it reached the ground. Blood-curdling screams erupted from the baby as it fell more into an unstable condition. As the shrieking child closer to death, the same chuckling in the previous video presented itself, but this time it was far louder than before. Determined to take it to the end, I fixed my eyes upon the screen despite how much they were tugging at me to look away. The man was screaming, and laughter, louder than the baby was. He floated over to the child again, unstrapped it, grabbing it by its legs, and to my utter shock, swung its head first as hard as it could into the wall. The child's head exploded upon impact, leaving the brain and fluid streaked all over the walls. The video then went black. Shaking, I forced myself to click on y.avi. Before the video played, I noticed that this file was modified within the last hour. Almost blinded by fear, I swallowed my apprehension and opened my eyes. This time, there was just the man. No other person was present. He was facing away from the camera and was speaking in a demonic tone, but there was a translation at the bottom of the screen to say what he said. "Hello. Clearly by now you know that I'm not the person you thought I was. I'm a sick and twisted man. I love this. It makes me so happy to see somebody die, especially at my hand. I know you're watching this, and I know you're terrified. The ghosts of those I've killed are swarming you right now, telling you to pull away from the screen, to save yourself. Yet, you still sit there and watch, waiting for some happy ending or a reasonable explanation as to the events you have just witnessed. There are no special effects here. Everything you saw was real. I love watching this footage, even so much as to push myself to it, but I had to hide it. Couldn't know. Your lonely piece of shit brain would tell you to turn me in. You were so desperate for love, you fell in love with the serial killer." I then turned around instantly and I recognized the face of my husband. I couldn't even feel emotion at this point. I didn't know what to think. My memory had fallen to pieces. I didn't know where I was, or who I had been, or what I was about to go through. Everything in my life died as I saw this. The once happy and bubbly eyes that I once saw in my husband's became vapid and motionless. A smile crept across his face, one that makes me quiver upon the slightest thought of it. This wasn't possession. This wasn't mental illness. This was evil. So evil. The video continued. "It's quite a shame. I really loved you. You had this passion." Remember the chuckle? I made you fall in love with me. I tricked you. I lied to you. And want to know the best part? I knew you would find out. I couldn't keep the secret forever. Eventually you'd find the key to the basement. Eventually the stench would become too strong. Eventually, the decaying foundation would begin to topple the house. And eventually, he finally realized that my children never had leukemia and that my husband never left. I killed them. And they're closer than you think. Why do you think the basement smells so bad? You'd be surprised how easy it is to cement human remains into the floor. You stepped on my dead children and wife. Feel proud of yourself? I know you're watching this. I just made this video. I know what you've done. I began shaking my head, fearing what I knew I was about to hear. The cold sweat crept across me, as I suddenly felt two eyes bore into the back of my head. Those noises you hear on pipes. Turn around. I slowly turned and froze as I met the psychotic eyes of my husband. He began to chuckle. I don't know what happened after that. I've been told by the police that people heard screams coming from my house during my attempted murder and called the police. I was told by them that I was violated with the sharp end of a screwdriver, and that he had placed a block of hot ice on my lap. I was tied to a chair, the same ones used in the previous videos, and was videotaped. All the videos are now in police custody, and I refuse to see mine. My husband was given the death penalty. I was presented at the execution. His last words were to tell me that he would never leave me, that he always knew where I was, that he would never give up on my murder, and that I never left a job unfinished. He was sure to tell me that I would see him again, that he sent another man to finish the job. He finished by telling me that I would never be safe. Ever. He survived the first 3 attempts at lethal injection, but died on the 4th. He was smiling, and he chuckled right before he died. I'd never been through extensive therapy, and years later, I've been able to overcome my horrific trauma and I saw an experience. I've made a good network of friends, and my life has been incredible. I feel accomplished and successful, something I've never felt before. I'm now confident, so confident, in fact, that I'm going on a date tonight with a boy. He's cute too, with his dark flowing hair and vibrant green eyes.